1. Early last year I had a strange encounter that you all might find interesting. So a quick tidbit about myself. I help people as often as I can, including giving money to homeless people or giving rides to hitchhikers, if we're going the same direction. 98% of the time, the worst I've encountered is awkward conversations, and being asked if I have meth to sell. No matter what though, I don't mess with people at night or in groups, and I keep weaponry on hand, though I've never even needed to show it. This is not one of those times. I lived in a lower income area of my city, and only about half a mile from the local homeless shelter, so I've seen plenty of people in a sad state during the 2 years I lived there. My apartment building kinda sat in a little valley with a little ravine across the street that deer hung out in. They liked our bus shelter on really rainy days. I lived on the 3rd floor. So one day I come home. It's blowing snow and around 15 degrees. In my entryway is a dude sitting on the staircase. It was obvious he was homeless and looking for a place to warm up, as he was wearing 4 days' worth of clothes at once, and had 2 backpacks with him. Not a big deal as long as he's not still there when the building is locked up for the day. Our shitty security consisted of having locks set for 9 to 5 office hours. As I pass him on the staircase, I give him a smile as I do literally every other stranger not screaming at me on the planet. He stops me and tries to talk to me. Now it's obvious he doesn't speak very good English, but I was able to discern that he was asking for water, and that he was waiting for a friend who lived in the building to come home. Yep, no problem. I head up to my apartment to get water for him, and he follows me. This was a bit uncomfortable, but I was already having a hard time communicating with him, so I let it slide. This is where things go wonky. My apartment was an efficiency where the bathroom was right inside the front door, and then a tiny hallway into, well, everything else. I walk to the kitchen to get the water, and he points at the bathroom. Yeah, sure dude. I have cleaning supplies, that's what they're for, so I go around the corner, pull out a couple bottles of water from the fridge, come back, and he's standing there buck naked in my hallway. Then it dawns on me. Water. He was asking for a shower. Oh gods. Then he tries to ask me to join him. No. Hard no. You understand, no. He goes into the shower, and I pace in my living room trying to figure out how the frack I can communicate to him that he needs to leave. 'Cause we went from uncomfortable to creep-tastic in 0.06 seconds. Then it got worse. He comes out, again buck naked, without a towel and begins wandering around my apartment, commenting on everything. Oh, and he's hard. Did I mention that part? Yeah, I lose my shit. Politely, because once you're in retail that never goes away. Trying to get him to put clothes on. He doesn't understand me. I pull out my phone, pull up Google Translate, and show him the list of languages. He understood what I was asking and selected Somalian. Goody, progress. Now, the things he's commenting on, in terrible half-English, is things like, you live alone, does this TV work? Nope. Done. I type into Google Translate, asking if he needed to call his friend, or call apartment management. He gives me a thumbs up, then climbs into my loft bed. Guess I'm cleaning that too now. So I'm like, which one? Another thumbs up. Okay, so either he didn't get what I was trying to do with the app after all, or he can't read. Eventually, my lizard brain took a breather from panicking, long enough for the logic part of my brain to take over, and I went to where his clothes were and pointed at them, then at the door. He got dressed and left. Simple. Done. Over. I shake for about 2 hours. Drink a 6-pack and post what happened to Facebook. In that time, it dawns on me that I probably just got stalked for theft. So I spend another hour, double and triple checking my security camera, which I originally got to check on the puppy I was training at the time, for later. The next day he was on the stairs again. I tried to be pleasant, but made it very clear with head shakes, and a roundabout trip back downstairs and back up the other flight on the other side of the building to my apartment, that I wasn't going to help him again or be his buddy. 2 days after that he was there again. I told the landlady and she had him removed, and I never saw him again. And before you ask, no, nothing was stolen. I moved to the exact opposite end of the city 4 months ago. So random, naked homeless dude, let's not meet again. 2. I punch in for the start of my 9-hour restaurant shift, hobbling around with a bone spur and manning the front counter. A woman and little sister come in. You can tell because they didn't look a little bit related when they ordered. They grabbed one of those blended coffees, and the mom or sister said, "I heard you talk about this last week. I never tried them. Do you want to sit and talk about school?" They then proceeded to sit down and chat over a basket of fries and coffee caramel smoothies. I walked around, idly touching things to stay busy. When I heard the familiar ding, a customer walked in. A small portly white man with a comb-over. He wore a white tee with jeans and glasses hanging from the front of his shirt. His face is red and he is visibly upset.
"You know, I don't know how they know me. I never met them before. How do they know about the fact that I'm dealing with something in my personal life? How do they even know me?"
I have no clue what he's going on about, so I ask for his order. He then says his girlfriend left him. She didn't know he was this close to finishing a payment on a ring. He held his fingers apart to show me how close. He claimed he had no money. She took it all. Blah, blah, blah. He had bad luck. I offered him a free drink and upgraded his meal, so he had something to fill his belly pro bono. The man is touched. He reaches out and shakily touches my hand, thanking me for my kindness and wonderful smile and blah blah. I smile again and walk away. I move around to make another drink for another customer, watching the caseworker with her name tag and teen that's all smiles licking whipped cream. Was he implying that these two were talking about him? The rest of the restaurant was empty at the moment. The guy pokes his head over the glass wall barrier.
"You see them, right? They said, 'How am I dealing with it?' when I walked by."
He huffs.
"How do they know me? Maybe my ex sent them."
He watches me make a coffee and rush around a few moments. He keeps watching. It is around now I realize I offered a free discount meal to a crazy man. He sits and eats, plugging in his phone and putting it under the table. And then he watches me, taking 30 minutes to eat, chewing and starting while I moved about and interacted with others. I accidentally caught his eye. I'd think, did he leave? And look up and he would be there still watching me. He finishes and tosses out his trash and approaches me again.
"I was watching over there. You have a great laugh," he says.
And I force a smile.
"Well, I wanted to let you know that I'm still charging my phone, so I'm going to be here for a while,"
he informs with a wink, and then walks outside. I think he's gone. I don't know why, because he has his drink still on the table. I tell the girls about him, and my manager flicks a glance over my shoulder. "There's a guy outside looking at you. He's looking at you hard." Whatever that means, I ignore it, and turn to take care of another customer. I catch a glimpse of him outside the restaurant, glaring behind the wall of glass. He notices me look, and smiles and waves. He takes this as an invitation to walk back in.
"I picked this up off the table for you,"
he says, handing me a stack of extra napkins. I thank him and put them under the counter, straight into the trash. He looks at me with a serious face.
"You know, she would never have left me if she knew about the 1,000 songs for her I wrote in my journals."
Guys, this man is like a balding pork-belly fella with a comb-over. He wrote 1,000 songs in a damn journal. The cringe is real. I walk away again and he moves to wipe up tables and touch furniture. I whisper to the girls about this man's love songs. We share a giggle where he can't see. But one of my co-workers is frowning. She shakes her head and continues to prepare food. I walk back to my computer and he's gone. I take care of a customer and see him outside the window again, glaring at me. I had been sleeping and cleaning a spill. I look over, feeling his eyes. He smiles and walks back in. I look behind the counter again.
I used to be a car salesman. I made lots of money selling cars, you know.
He says, and I congratulate him. He then nods and smiles.
Yeah, and you know, I also write hip-hop and rap songs. You wouldn't think it, but I'm going to be famous for my hip-hop and rap. You see, it's like a poem.
I ignore him. I'm a damn writer, I know what a poem is. And is he trying to impress me because of my tan skin? Does he think I listen to rap and hip-hop? I'm a Spanish girl that grew up on Avril Lavigne and Casey Kasem's Top 40 alternative list on Sundays. He wasn't impressing me much, like the song. Now is the time I mention I've been married 15 years, and I'm sporting an obvious ring. I move away and touch stuff off to the side where he can't see. A co-worker walks over to me. Honey, you don't need to be talking to those creeps. You don't have to. Stay back here. I'll go in front. I think she gained a small slot in my heart with those words, and I swear there were, almost, tears as I thanked her and cleaned the back. I told her she'd never know how grateful I felt. Seriously, I owe that young lady a bushel of flowers and wine. She doesn't even know. He tried to look at me over the wall, but she nicely intercepted him and asked him if he was purchasing an item. He then mumbled he was done, grabbed his phone and charger, and left when I was hiding. He stayed for 4 hours and 20 minutes. The head boss almost called the cops. So, to the bald man with the comb-over that has a diary of over 1,000 love songs, and will become an aspiring rapping sensation, I say this from the bottom of my heart. Let's not meet again. 3. I've had a couple of frightening encounters over the span of my life, but nothing quite as intense as the one that took place on a night during my senior year of high school. I had been managing the latest in a series of successive breakups with my high school sweetheart, and I was looking for any reason I could find not to sequester myself in my computer room, as I so often did. My friend Mia, who lived in a neighboring community, had invited me over to her place to hang out with her and her brother. I was a socially awkward teenager, and with Mia being a fairly recent acquaintance, I accepted on the condition that I could bring along a frequent companion of mine, my friend Robert. He was always prepared to hang out, and I could confirm his presence there even before asking him. She was hesitant of bringing another person around, but when I promised her we'd set off some of Robert's fireworks, she agreed. Mia had conditions of her own, stressing the importance of calling her to come pick us up as soon as we arrived at the transit station. I thought it was a bit of an odd request. I had been to Mia's house before, and it was only a short walk from the station. I didn't think to ask her why, as I was just pleased to be asked to go anywhere. Oh, and you have to bring your fireworks, I told Robert. After grumbling, he gathered the small cache of fireworks he has stashed away under his bed, and we headed out. Robert and I arrived at the station at around 11, and I did as Mia had instructed. Not expecting an invite that late in the evening, my cell phone was left uncharged with just enough juice to let Mia know we had arrived. As Robert and I whiled away the time singing 80s tunes in an off-key rhythm, a black SUV with tinted windows came screaming into the parking area next to the station, swerving wildly and honking, before it shot off into the suburban community we were headed towards. Mia arrived shortly after, and we made our way towards the schoolyard. Robert was still a bit prickly about wasting the last of his fireworks, which was fairly uncharacteristic of him, as he presented himself as one of the most habitually apathetic people I had ever known up to that point. We set off a handful of fireworks. A few of them were duds, but most of them did what they were designed for, attracting attention. Another black SUV came barreling down the road by the school a few minutes later. This one had a collection of balloons tied to the interior of the car that flew out a rear window, battering against one another as the SUV came to a sudden halt. Mia's face held a look of knowing concern that I didn't entirely understand. "I'll be right back," she told us. I held my breath from a distance as I witnessed a figure hop out of the passenger seat of the SUV and approach Mia. I let out a heavy sigh of relief as their greeting, while out of earshot, was warm. There was a rapport and friendliness not commonly reserved for foreboding strangers you meet with the hour creeping closer to midnight, and the lights in the surrounding homes growing increasingly scarce. Mia was the type of gal you couldn't help but like. She was bright, funny, talented, and never did much to offend people. She treated everyone on equal terms, and a natural byproduct of that is collecting friends of every high school archetype. Some of those archetypes were ones that I was all too familiar with. The jocks, bullies, the bad seeds, the latter of which her district's high school had a notorious reputation for. By that point in my life, I was already content with the knowledge that the flaring tempers between most individuals of every identifiable clique would simmer with age. But there would always be the select few that never quite get over the thrill of illicit dealings and physical violence. Their behavior would escalate, and they'd step into the criminal lifestyle of a young adult, where their actions become less excusable. I was, and still am, a tiny male at 28 years old, never growing beyond 5'4", an easy target for such a person. I had the reputation for being a mischievous but laid-back slacker who could take a punch but couldn't throw one, and I relied on the former trait to diffuse tense situations with people outside of my tribe. It didn't always work, but it allowed me to skate by relatively unharmed for most of my high school career. Mia embraced the stranger in a hug before they parted ways. The stranger got back in the SUV and sped off. When she returned, I asked her what that was all about. "That was a friend of mine from St. Francis High. They're out celebrating his buddy's 18th birthday by driving around and beating the shit out of people walking by themselves. You're all right if you're with me, but I think we should probably head back to my place." Fine by me. I'd rather not be party to some kid's twisted adulthood initiation rites, as he proves his machismo to his buddies while they take turns packing my face in. We arrived at Mia's house, but the mood had turned pretty sour and contemplative, as we sat with very little to discuss aside from the obvious. We got about 20 minutes into a movie before Mia's father walked in.
"Mia, it's 12. Time to say goodnight to your friends."
Mia explained the situation, but being an honor student with overly invested parents can sometimes mean bearing the burden of strict rules. One being bed by 12, the other being no safe harbor for teenage boys overnight. Christ, what have we gotten ourselves into? Mia told us that there were 4 of the SUVs driving around. She asked for us to be safe before saying goodbye and locking the door behind her. Robert and I slowly walked off from the porch and into the cul-de-sac. A disappointing evening, but it happens. I took my cell phone from my pocket to trouble my best friend for a ride, but had forgotten that I hadn't charged it earlier, and the battery had died since. Robert didn't bother to carry a cell phone with him, and communicated with the few people he did hang out with over MSN Messenger. We took inventory of what we had left with us before taking off towards the transit station. My pockets were virtually empty, save for my wallet. Robert had a single remaining firework in his possession, along with his Zippo lighter. There was a house down the street that I recalled was being renovated with one of those industrial-sized disposable bins out on the front street. I leapt inside and re-emerged, hefting a 2x4 with a couple of bent nails in it. Robert laughed at the visual. "Call me Buford Pusser Jr. I'm walking small," I cracked. Robert had his Zippo and firework at the ready. "I'll shoot this right in their fucking faces," he said. If it sounds as if we were in high spirits, it's because the risk of our situation hadn't quite sunken in yet. We were aware that the transit station would be shuttering relatively soon. The train wouldn't be any help since this particular station held the final terminal on the line. But the buses might still be active. The neighborhood we started in had enough walkways, bike lanes, and tree cover that we could slink our way through the shadows for a while. We took our time choosing the most secluded and unlit passageways, which, in hindsight, I realized did nothing to help our nerves. At one point we came up to an intersecting walkway we were familiar with in the daytime. The passageway ahead was lit overhead by a single yellow streetlight before fading into a yawning mouth of pitch darkness. We stood there agonizing for several minutes over whether we should find another route or stay the course. listening for any sound of movement on the other side. We briefly contemplated camping out for the remainder of the night, before opting for another detour. Night's silence was punctuated every so often with the squealing of tires, shouting, or the sudden accelerating of a vehicle. Then we reached the main road. Not only one of the main roads in the area, but one of the main roads on our end of town. From there on there was little cover, nothing but houses, buildings, and a large empty parking lot, all illuminated by streetlights that at that moment felt more like the halogen floodlights they shine on escaped prisoners as they rush across the yard to freedom. There was little traffic at this point in the night, so if one of the SUVs did come down that road, we would not go unnoticed, and there would be virtually nothing to stop them from doing what they were intent on doing. We listened for any sign of obnoxious motor revving before we took off across the road and into the parking lot. Less than a minute later, we arrived at the transit station. We quickly checked the posted bus times, but as indicated by the digital clock outside, all of the buses had made their final run. We hoped to take shelter in the train terminal, but the doors had already been locked. We'd have to stick to the main road until we made it to the bus trap. The bus trap was our safe haven. What's unique to this bus trap is that it was right under a tightly constructed underpass that divided one community from another. After years of drivers still risking the odds to make their trip shorter, the underpass had also been fitted with added precautions, cement blockades and a metal gate that only opened for buses. This would increase our chances of making a clean getaway, if the birthday boy and his pals sped towards us. Robert and I flinched at every distant sound, unaware of whether it was an ordinary motorist on their way home after a late evening, or the assailants we were so concerned with running into. We began to think that maybe we were overreacting. There was a good chance that someone had already phoned the police on them, and that they had taken off for another area to avoid detection. Maybe they had gone home, or better yet, gotten arrested. We let our guard slip as we reached our old junior high school, starting to think that the worst-case scenario we were preparing for was already behind us. That I was carrying a cumbersome piece of wood only to look like a jackass. That Robert was still armed with a firework and his Zippo for nothing. This is where I remembered the set of walkways leading straight through the community towards an elementary school, which was right by the bus trap. I had walked it plenty of times before, and with the streetlights spaced out every 60 feet, we'd see them from a mile away, but they'd see us too. What we were greeted with instead were long expanses of burnt-out streetlights, another sparsely lit tunnel of shadows and nightmares. We started down the path because what other choice did we really have? Robert flicked his Zippo over as much as he could, still careful to conserve his lighter fluid in case of an actual confrontation. The walk didn't last long. The oversensitive back porch lights helped to fill in the dark points, but there reached a point where it was getting too dark, where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and the accompanying sound of snapping twigs and branches was enough to signify that we might just want to get the fuck out of there. We stood paralyzed for a moment, imagining the birthday boy and his friends waiting behind the shadows to pummel us bloody. Though sensing it had likely just been an animal, we returned to the quieter neighborhood areas. There may be more room for them to see us, but less of a risk of getting cornered. We quickly made our way along unfamiliar streets and joined up with the final walkway to see it, the elementary school, and in the distance the bus trap. We were so relieved to see safety in our sights, walking at a relaxed pace and feeling foolish for turning a 20-minute walk into an hour-long ordeal. We passed through the elementary school grounds and began walking the fully lit street down the bus trap, when a black SUV came whipping around the corner on the left-hand side nearest to the bus trap, balloons from the rear window streaking backward from the velocity as the vehicle accelerated. There's no way they didn't see us. "Shit, shit, shit, shit!" I shouted at Robert as we doubled back towards the elementary school and rounded the corner. We both had to think fast, as the road we were on was only a 15-second drive at the recommended speed. We ran down the street along the elementary school but found no cover. I heard the engine grow closer to us within seconds of turning onto the street. We were out of time, and I pointed to the only cover I could find, a side yard fence. No accompanying front fence, no attaching hedge, nothing. Robert and I lay down on the grass against the fence, like long boards as stiff as corpses, our respective weapons at the ready. I have never felt my heart pump as hard as it was at that moment, tightly gripping the 2x4 while I watched Robert position the firework and uncap the Zippo, as if this was going to do anything. We really were chumps. The SUV slowed to a crawl as it turned the corner, the headlights reaching down the road as they went searching for us. Convinced they wouldn't find us in the car, they parked. They parked at the edge of the property, right fucking next to us. The headlights of the SUV were peeking out just beyond the fence. We were beyond fucked. 4 doors popped open within a few seconds of each other, feet kicking up gravel as the birthday gang murmured to one another and began searching for us. I noted at least 4 sets of footsteps and a couple of indistinct voices. We were definitely outnumbered. My mind flashed through all the numerous times I'd been pushed around at school, laughing good-naturedly as I refused to fight back in futility. I knew everyone who did this to me, and this humanized me to them, even though they never pushed it too far. These people didn't know me. They weren't aware of the bullshit persona I assumed, the odd guy who was alright with pain. They didn't know I pretended to think I was funny. These fuckers wanted to hurt me. They wanted to hurt me, and they wanted to hurt my friend. This is it, I thought. This is the moment you quit being such a coward and earn your own fucking respect. I gripped the 2x4 tightly enough to dig tiny wooden splinters into my hand, and just listened to my heart thump as my blood boiled with whatever rage I could summon. I would only have a slim opportunity to surprise them before they'd take us down, and I hoped that Robert could get his firework off soon enough to buy us some time. If I was only going to get one strike, I was going to make sure it counted. As if some force miraculously knew what we were up against, I heard a voice say, "Fuck it." A few seconds later, the car door slammed shut, the SUV backed up, pulled a U-turn, and drove off. All of the courage I had to muster, everything I was prepared to fight with in a losing battle that I never knew I had in me, all slowly settled back into the deepest regions of my body. Robert and I walked the quiet back route to the bus trap. We arrived at the underpass and casually walked through it. We both took a moment to look back into the other community that we had spent so much of our time in, without issue, now in recognition of what we had narrowly avoided. It felt like the type of thing a person should do. I wish I could say that this near brush had some transformative effect on me, that it forced me to re-examine my passive tendencies and open up a new chapter in my life where I stopped letting myself be treated like everyone's rag doll. It didn't, not necessarily. My one takeaway from this experience was that despite my many previous assumptions about my fight-or-flight response, it proved that in a rare moment when I'm backed into a corner, I'll be prepared to stand my ground. Until then, birthday gang, let's not meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 318. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Alas, it must be a short outro because it's currently 1 in the morning and I want to get these videos exported and uploaded. I just want to thank you all for the great comments you've been leaving. Welcome all the new subscribers, the numbers are still doing quite well in that. Fingers and toes and whatnot crossed, I'm hoping maybe I can hit 50,000 by the end of the year, because that would be a nice little Christmas present. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.